Welcome back to another episode of Sunday Golds, a Florida State baseball podcast. Gonna have a different co-host with me on this episode of Sunday Golds. Instead of Arya, we're gonna have pitching coach Micah Posey, who's got a lot of new arms to work with this year. A group of 20 guys. I think you have 13 new arms on the pitching staff, and I think we'll just get right into it about the pitching staff this year. Just first off, Micah, just how'd the fall go for you guys, and how excited are you about the new group of arms that you have coming off last year and the work that you guys were able to do in the portal and the high school class that you brought in?
Yeah, it was a good fall. We got to play some outside competition. Playing Mississippi State, playing UAB, gave us a good look. As far as outside competition, the Garnet Gold scrimmage gave us a good look in front of our fans. Since we pretty much got every pitcher on the staff that was available for the game in the game that night, so we got to see a lot of new faces, see how certain guys were responding to certain situations. So yeah, it was a good fall from an evaluation standpoint, knowing kind of where we're at. And so now we're in the period of, all right, what needs to be cleaned up, what needs to be fixed, where do we need to go from here to try to get ready for the season. And unfortunately, the baseball calendar, a lot of that's going to be done at home, so you have to be pretty organized as far as their routines, what they're doing, what your expectation is of them. Throwing programs, like we lay it out for them day by day the whole time they're home. So yeah, we're kind of in that. We're getting ready headed into that unknown time of year for baseball coaches.
When you're in the fall, just kind of what is that evaluation process like for you when you are working on new things with guys and you're also just learning new players at the same time versus I guess the evaluation process when you get back in the preseason and maybe it's a little bit more performance based.
Yeah, in the fall, you're pretty much evaluating a bunch of different things. So first off, you're starting like, what kind of competitor is this guy? When things get hard, when there's adversity, does he quit? Does he shy away from that? Does he get better in some of those situations? Link does a really good job muddying the bases. So, Link will start an inning and runners at first and second, just put him right out into a kind of like a little bit of a storm. It's funny, like a lot of times the pitchers, the first inning is clean, nobody on, and they'll just bang, 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 1, 2, 3, and then you'll put them in like a little bit of a jam, and they're trying to get the first guy to punch out, and they're nibbling, and then you're giving up the big hit, and so it's from that standpoint, you're trying to evaluate, what kind of competitor they are, how they react to outside competition, crowds, and then you're getting specific on the delivery. Are there parts of this delivery that's not allowing this person to be consistent? Maybe there's some leaks in the delivery that's not allowing the stuff to reach its full potential as far as velocity or pitch shapes. And then you're evaluating the pitch, the pitch package. You're trying to figure out what pitches does this guy throw? What pitches does he need to be throwing? Is he throwing the right fastball? Like that's a pretty simple place to start. A lot of times, is he throwing a 4-seam? Is he throwing a 2-seam? Which one's best for him? With the new pitching lab, we can see like, is the fastball efficient? Meaning it's got clean backspin. It's 100% spin efficiency. Those guys should be 4-seam guys. Maybe it's got a little wobble and it's not super efficient. Maybe it's a little offset with the spin. Maybe it's a low spin efficiency, like an 80%. Those guys probably need to be 2-seams. Once we establish what fastball they need to be throwing, then it's like, all right, what parts of the zone do we need to be throwing this to? Is their command good enough where we can go, down and away to a righty, maybe into a righty? Is the command not where it needs to be? Maybe we just need to focus on the heart of the plate, maybe middle down or middle up. Once we distinguish what fastballs are throwing, what part of the zone the fastball is being thrown to, then you go to the off-speed pitches. What off-speed pitches are going to tunnel off this? Is it a short gyro with depth? Slider? Is it a big slider with sweep? Your sinker ball guys, the ball goes arm side. The sweeper going glove side is a pretty good, good pitch to mirror with that. The guys that maybe have climb on the fastball, a depth curveball going off that, maybe a short slider going off that's good. And then I feel like in today's climate, the changeup is the toughest. It seems to be the toughest pitch. I remember when I first got into this, the changeup was the easiest pitch to teach. And now, with the quest for velo and spin and swing and miss, it feels like that's the pitch that lags the most. So trying to get guys a functional changeup, maybe a cutter, something that's, a little different. We've experimented with a split with one of the freshmen that had pretty good feel for that. So, from an evaluation standpoint, that's kind of where you start and then where you end.
You mentioned the new pitching lab. Just obviously, it's the season of thanks with Thanksgiving tomorrow. How thankful are you for the upgrades that you guys were able to make in there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super thankful, super blessed. I think it's one of those spaces where you go down there. I think every time I go down there, I learn something new. And honestly, where we're at with it now, and we'll be with it in a year from now, it'll just continue to progress. And our knowledge will continue to get better with it. Um, I used it like the first time we got TrackMan, we knew like, okay, induced vertical brake was good. The horizontal brakes are good. And then as we got into it, year, 2 years into TrackMan, we started learning the seam shifts, the late movement of the seam shift. We started learning vertical approach angle and how flat the pitches are when they approach the strike zone. So the same thing with the pitching lab down there at the delivery. We got some basic understandings of how the torso and the pelvis and some of those things are moving. But I think as we get a year or two into it, we'll just continue to get better with how we're, leveraging the technology. But super thankful, Link Jarrett, his vision for what he's trying to do, he puts the players first. Like, a lot of people can say that, but you can go down and look and how he's invested in the program. And it starts, with athletic director and the booster club and the fundraising. And there's so many hands that go into that project. It's kind of a village, so to speak, but, Link, to put the player first. I mean, I was talking to a coach yesterday. I won't say who, but another coach, and they're doing some upgrades to their facility, and none of it is benefiting the players. It didn't feel like. So, for us, for Link to put the players first and kind of with the pitching lab and development, it's very thankful to be a part of that for sure.
And you guys put out the video, I think, on Monday on social, working with Driveline to set up the pitching lab. Just how has it been like working with those guys? I think Kyle Bodie specifically, and just I think what is the difference kind of between what you already had in the pitching lab and versus what you have added on to it now?
Yeah, so Kyle Bodie, Mike Rathwell at Driveline, those two guys have been phenomenal. This started, kind of long ago when I was at Dallas Baptist. We were talking about bringing them in and doing player assessments, and part of that was a motion capture analysis where they would bring in 8 cameras. They'd set it up around our players. And at the time it was a pretty hefty fee to do that. We opted not to do it. Just at the time, it didn't make sense for us as a program. There's some financial barriers as well, but fast forward, I saw at the convention last year, I saw Rathwell, Kyle Bodie. We were talking, and they were like, they had the launch pad down in Tampa, and Jamie Arnold actually had thrown on it during the Christmas break. So I was asking, like, hey, what could we do to get our guys down to Tampa? Link was like, hey, we'll bus them down. Like, we'll put them in a hotel to run through the lab. And Rathwell was like, would you just want to build one at your place? And I kind of laughed. I was like, what would that cost? And we started talking about it, and Link, was all about it from the get-go. And he was, super into it. And so, so a simple conversation, and Link was looking to put something down that space with more tech, and he wanted to do something like that. So that kind of relationship formed into what we have now. And so what we installed in the lab is a motion capture analysis system. So the best way I can describe that is, prior to this year, we had TrackMan down there with an Edgertronic camera. So TrackMan kind of measures ball flight, and it tells you what the ball is doing as it approaches the strike zone, how it's spinning, how much it's spinning, the angle at which it's approaching the strike zone, how it comes out of the hand, the seams, what the seam orientation is going toward the catcher. Like, I mean, there's a ton of information that the TrackMan provides for the ball flight going to the catcher. The one thing we didn't have is anything to measure what the body was doing. The body is the output of the baseball. So a motion capture analysis back in the day, you'd have to put like the white foamy stickers on your body. You'd see sports science guys doing it. They'd put a black suit on. They'd put 1,000 markers on their body, and then they would throw, and it would kind of give you the kinematics of the body. In our facility with what Driveline built, you can throw a bullpen in your uniform, and it gives you the same information. So for us, the couple times we've used it, our guys have been getting hot to go pitch in a scrimmage. They're throwing their 15, 20 warm-up pitches in the bullpen. We get them to kind of like max intent towards the backside of that, ready to go in the game. That thing kind of works. It takes the 6 best fastballs and it spits a report out. It takes about 4 hours to turn the report around. But once we get the report, I mean, we can see everything. And, not to get too crazy in the weeds and, talk over people or anything like that. But like we can simple, like what's the stride length? And it's objective data. It's not like, oh, I think he's striding the height of his body. It could be like, this guy's striding 5 foot 2 inches in a millimeter. It'll tell you down to the specific. The pelvis, where's his hips when his foot gets the foot strike? Is his belt buckle pointing towards first base? A left-handed pitcher, is his belt buckle pointing towards first base? His hips are too closed. Is his belt buckle pointing towards a plate at landing? They're too open. We know that the pelvis needs to be between 37 and 42 degrees at foot strike. So now we can give the guys actual, like, hey, this is where your pelvis is at. So we can work on closing those up. The torso, how much does the torso forward at max external release? Is it too forward? Is it too upright? Are you rotating efficiently? Does your torso rotate fast? It can tell us how fast your torso is rotating, which equals velocity. How much layback do you get with your arm? Does it lay back or does it stiff? So there's been a lot of data, a lot of information. We've ran most of our guys through it. I would say probably 80% of our guys have ran through it. And then we come back from break, we'll give them a couple pins to get going. And then we'll run them, back through that system to see where everybody's at coming back from break and see if anybody made adjustments and then what adjustments we need to make. And that system is not something you use every bullpen, but about once a month just to check in, see where the delivery's at. Is it trending in a positive direction? Is it going in a negative direction? What do we need to fix? We don't want guys to be internal lab rats. Like there is a component of competing in the game. So for me, it's my job to, keep the information as simple as possible and give them easy, actionable plans that they can execute and allow them to be a high level competitor. And they're not out there thinking algorithms and overthinking the delivery and those things.
Just how much has the role of a pitching coach evolved since you started it? I mean, now you're having to deal. I mean, I feel like the biomechanics has become so much more involved in the last 10 years or so. And I think you became a pitching coach around 2011 or 12, I want to say.
Yeah.
Just since then, just how much has that changed from just being a coach and just shapes and maybe scouting arms to now all the other things that you're doing in the lab?
Yeah, I mean, I coached high school baseball in 2011, and you're just trying to teach those guys how to compete, and you're trying to get them to a place physically where they needed to be and those things, and teach them the intricacies of the game and how to approach hitters and those things. And then 2013, I started at Elon as a volunteer assistant, and at the time, like nobody in the country really had tech. Like there wasn't ball flight, there wasn't anything with the body. And I'll be honest with you, Driveline, I think, was one of the first, pioneers of that front. They were kind of the ones pushing some of the things, as far as, hey, this is how you can do pitch design. And they were kind of on the forefront of a lot of that stuff. But it's evolved greatly. Now you've got people like Trade Athletics and Randy Sullivan at the Baseball Armory, and there's a lot of good places that do good jobs. And I think the one thing that all these places are doing a really good job of is they're measuring where these guys are at from a mobility standpoint, a strength standpoint, delivery, and they're kind of mirroring all those together. And then they're giving them kind of in-depth player plans and ways to develop. And so as a pitching coach, if you're not doing some of these things, they're going elsewhere to get the information. And so for us to be able to have this in-house moving forward is maybe, we can get in front of that and kind of have our own infrastructure where guys, don't have to go outside to get those resources. They can get them in-house. Like right now, if you're doing a biomechanics, if you're going, doing a markerless bullpen and you're trying to figure out where your delivery's at, I mean, you're going to Trade Athletics, you're going to Driveline in Tampa or Washington, you're going maybe to the Armory down in Lakeland, you're going to Prime Performance down in St. Lucie. Like you're not, there's nowhere in Tallahassee where you're just ripping one of those. So for us to have this in Tallahassee in our facility, just shows a commitment to the baseball program, to the pitcher specifically, to the vision for player development and the baseball program. It definitely shows a commitment level.
Moving the conversation back to this group that you guys have this year. Just when you went into the offseason coming off last year and when the year ended at Oregon State, just for you as the pitching coach, what were things that you wanted to get in the portal and basically evolve your pitching staff into?
Yeah, I think when you get to the end of the season, you kind of look at two things. You look at, all right, what do we need to do better? And then what do we have coming back? What do we have coming back and what holes do we need to fill? And for us, unfortunately, the draft was a double-edged sword. We had the most players in program history. That was great. But at the same time, we had a lot of bodies that left and that we needed to fill. And you're not just filling for anybody. I mean, you're talking, Lodis, Arnold, Wes, Maxwell. Like, there's some good players. I started naming them. I shouldn't have done that because there's a lot of good ones. But for us, the biggest thing we wanted to target in the portal was, we knew we were going to need some starting pitching and some guys with some experience, guys we thought we could roll over the lineup. You lost Bellini and Arnold, your Friday and Saturday guys. That's a bulk of your innings. So we knew we were going to need to replace those guys. We had a couple guys in the program already that we felt like had a chance to do that, but we also wanted to add some guys outside the program, to try to, give us depth at that position. But I think the biggest focus was the bullpen and, how can we finish games? How can we, we didn't have a lot of different looks in the bullpen last year. We didn't have big sinkers. We didn't have different arm angles per se. So for me, I wanted to try to get some different arm angles, some different fastball qualities, maybe some different pitches, maybe some guys with changeups, maybe guys with sweepers, gyro. Like, we just wanted to have a little bit more diversity to our bullpen look. And then we also wanted to get experience, guys that have done it, not just at the Division I level, but at, the Power 4 level. We were able to go out and get some of those guys as well. And I think we were pretty happy with what we landed on in the portal.
You're one returner from the weekend rotation. You mentioned Joey and Jamie going on in the draft. Bringing back Wes, I think he took the summer off. I think he worked at the Baseball Armory in Tampa this summer. Just when he got back this fall, just where did you see improvements from him, and how much did you think that summer off helped him and just get his arm fresh after throwing the innings he threw last year?
Yeah, I mean, he looked really good this fall. The slider was a little flat to start the fall, as expected. He hadn't thrown a game since May or June, so getting back into it, there's some things we had to straighten out. But I thought the very last outing, the slider looked really, really good. The velocity was climbing. I think we saw it at the 95, 96. He made some adjustments to the delivery that looked really good. The changeup, trying to get at his slot. Last year his slot would drop on his changeup. There would be some arm side misses. Coming back, he was able to get back on top of the changeup, right? Mirror it with his fastball slot. So the biggest thing with Wes coming back is just his maturity level. You could tell on and off the field, he's matured. He's carrying himself with a lot more maturity. He's very curious. He's asking a lot more questions this year. You can tell. He's starting to kind of he has a year under his belt, a lot more comfortable. Kind of what we're looking for him is just kind of the stability of who he is, off the field as far as his work ethic and how he goes about his business. And, he's a pro's pro, and the way he went about his business this fall, didn't go unnoticed. And, I'm excited for him. I think he's poised for a big year.
You guys added Trey Beard from Florida Atlantic, and he was ranked number 1 pitcher in the portal by D1 Baseball. Just getting to work with Trey this fall. Obviously, he's someone that's already thrown a lot of innings in college. Just when you get an arm in like that, just with that much experience, how much of a blessing is that? And then what were the things that you were working on with him this fall?
Yeah, Trey, that was a huge addition for us. The thing that I've come to appreciate with Trey is just he's very low maintenance. He's kind of reminds me of Jamie a little bit as far as how he goes about it, just kind of easy going, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. Kind of got some hippie vibes to him. But the biggest thing with him was just, getting him in the weight room. He did, FAU did a great job with him there. He made a lot of big jumps there as a player and developed very well, under Coach McCormick and their system. But, the biggest thing, coming into here was just continuing to, get a little bit stronger. I know he maxed out last week and there was huge gains in the weight room. His changeup is a Bugs Bunny changeup for us. We didn't really want to mess with that a whole lot. We kind of let it be. We're going to try to use the slider a little bit more than he used it last year. I think last year, backside of the year, he brought it out a little bit. We saw some really good sliders here in this Mississippi State game. And the curveball is a pitch that, there's days where it's -20 vert. There's days where it's -11, but the one thing is he throws it hard, 78, 79, sometimes even 80 with a lot of depth. So for us, we're just going to try to make sure we're chasing the velocity with that pitch, but also maintain the shape. But, one thing with Trey is he's going to, attack the strike zone and he's going to compete. And, we even saw that Mississippi State got a little bit of pickle and didn't panic too much, just continuing to make pitches and pitch. And definitely feels like a veteran guy on the mound when he's out there, feels like a guy that's been out there and done it. So yeah, we're excited about the addition of him to the staff for sure.
And it seems like you guys were really excited about what Bryson Moore was presenting to you guys throughout this fall. I think you mentioned in one of your press conferences a 4-pitch mix with the fastball running into the mid-90s. Just getting to see that stuff and him being healthy throughout this fall. Just how good was that to see?
Yeah, it was awesome. He was really good. When you get some of these guys in, like you have a level of expectation, and some guys, kind of come in right at that expectation. Some guys exceed, and I thought he exceeded expectation. And I don't think we had a low bar or low expectation for him. We had pretty high expectations, but I mean, he came in and looked like a real guy, a real pro prospect. I know a lot of the pro scouts were super excited about him and his development. He's another guy trained at Tread this summer, coming from Virginia. He had trained at Tread with a guy named Cody Witten, who had done a really good job with his pitch mix. But the biggest thing with Bryson is, we just, we need to keep him healthy. And if we can do that, I mean, I think the sky's the limit for the guy. It's a lot of plus pitches coming at you. A big overhand curveball that spins at 3,000, a sweep slider, a short gyro cutter that is up to 88, 89. The fastball's got some life to it, up to 95, with some life. Feel for a changeup. I think the changeup's the one thing moving forward. We're going to try to, made some slight adjustments to his grip. We're going to try to keep getting that pitch to be. It's got the great movement. We just need a little bit more consistent in the zone. But, Coach Jarrett has a quality against at bat chart, and it charts hard hit contact. 3 contact would be a ball that's hit very hard, 2 contact, whatever. And then 1 contact is a ball that most likely doesn't leave the infield. It's a very soft hit. And then he has a walk, strikeout metric, and he's got this kind of algorithm, this formula for grading pitchers. And Bryson Moore was our number 1 pitcher on his algorithm this fall. And I think it's because, that hit by pitch was the only free pass he had the whole fall. He had 1 hit by pitch. He didn't have any walks. And so I think he had punched out 10 or 11 guys and wasn't a whole lot of 3 contacts. So he graded out the highest on that chart. And so, coming out of fall, we had originally scheduled for him to throw against UAB because he didn't pitch this summer. And after Mississippi State, it's like, man, the stuff, everything, like there's really no reason to keep throwing him. So we put him down, started his deload early. And then right now he's kind of in his ramp up, and he'll start bullpens December 8th, and he'll start his climb for the season.
You ever had someone go through the fall before with only 1 free pass?
I haven't seen it honestly a whole lot. Like, our hitters are really good and they do a good job controlling the strike zone. And, with the stuff, you're starting to see the stuff's ticking up in baseball because you have to beat guys in the strike zone. They're not expanding. The Garnet Gold scrimmage, I don't think 1 pitch in the buffer was called a strike. So the zones are certainly smaller. You got to beat guys inside the strike zone. So the stuff is ticking up, and you're seeing the quest for stuff. But with that, the feel for pitching and the feel of execution is kind of going down. And so Bryson presents both of those. He's got feel for stuff and the execution, which is, in today's game seems a little bit like a unicorn, right? I think that's what made Jamie Arnold so special. So, we're definitely excited about Bryson moving forward.
Speaking of stuff, I think the highest profile stuff that you guys brought in from the portal was Oregon transfer Cole Stokes. Just what did you see on a Cole throughout this fall? I think you struggled with some of the command against Mississippi State, but also ripped off a bunch of really good sliders that got a bunch of swings and misses. So just how would you evaluate where he's at coming out of the fall?
Yeah, Cole, it's probably some of the best stuff I've ever coached, honestly.
Mhm.
I've coached some pretty good stuff. I think it's some of the best raw stuff that I've coached. It's a power sinker up to 99 this fall. The sweep slider is, one of the best pitches in college baseball, one of the best secondary pitches in college baseball. And the changeup was a pitch that, he kind of thrown a little bit last year, but like I thought that was a real weapon this fall, and he showed feel for it in the zone. The big thing with Cole is just going to be the fastball command and continue to kind of refine that. I think sometimes, for not just him, but any pitcher, there's pressure on banging, pitches for strikes. And sometimes, when it doesn't seem to be happening, they kind of get a little skittish and back off a little bit and start to nibble a little bit. But for him, just staying aggressive in the zone. He's got some of the best stuff in the country. Um, I've seen him command his stuff. This fall his fastball zone percentage was 50%. The major league average is 52% zone percentage, meaning how many fastballs he throws in the strike zone. So we saw him command the fastball this fall. The Mississippi State was kind of an outing that was a little bit different than some of the outings we had seen on campus, but he's a big time arm. He's getting a lot of pro interest. That's a guy you could look up in a couple of years. He could be pitching a big league game, maybe a World Series. Like, it's elite stuff. And, we're excited he's in the program, and there's some things that we're going to need to help him with. But I feel like he's got all the raw stuff to be a star.
Talking about some of the other guys that you brought back, John Abraham, Payton Manca. Manca was someone that went up to the Cape this summer and had a really good Cape League performance, and John, a guy that's back for you guys with you guys for a third year. Just are those two guys potential guys that could get some innings as starters for you guys, some that could extend out in the bullpen? Just where do you feel like those guys are at going into their third year with the program?
Yeah, I definitely think those both are two guys kind of looking right there, as far as getting in and starting. Johnny A's got a bunch of pitches. He's got a really good pitch mix. I think for him, just trying to identify where we need to throw the fastball in the zone. Also the breaking ball, the spike at times he was spiking so hard on the ball is causing the curveball to be a little shorter. I think we got to the bottom of that towards the end of the fall, and was able to lengthen the curveball out and get it the best shape it needs to have. For Johnny, it's going to be about holding his stuff over a long period of time. Sometimes, his stuff might die off after the 40th pitch or whatever. So there's some things we're working on. We noticed, when he throws, he kind of holds his breath in the release. And so that takes a lot of, energy out of you. And certainly with a pitch clock and having to turn that thing around so quick, with him, there's some breathing things we're working on over the break to try to get his breath a little bit stronger and a little bit more controlled. But the stuff is there. He's poised for a big year. If you looked up and Johnny was starting meaningful games for you, it would not shock me at all. He's got the ability to do it. Payton Manca made a big jump, with stuff, but also strikes. I thought the strikes was a lot better. One thing we challenged him going into the break was, he made a big jump with stuff, but like, hey, let's make another jump. There's another jump that we think he can make. But he controlled the zone this fall. The biggest thing for Payton is going to be able to get the swing and miss when he needs it. UAB, we kind of saw he got in a jam, second, third, 2 outs, 2 strikes, just didn't get the swing and miss when he needed it. And honestly, I think those were the only runs he gave up all fall. He was nails for us this fall. So for Payton, just the ability to finish JBs, be in the strike zone a lot, to get ahead, but then also having, what coach would call on a grading scale, we grade 1 to 5, we call 3+ a good college breaking ball, a 3+ breaking ball that can end at bats. But I'm super excited with Payton's development over the summer. He's worked his tail off. He's made big jumps. You can tell he's confident, coming off the Cape and being an all-star, he's ready to roll, and we're excited about, Payton and Johnny A.
Someone that stood out to me when I got to see you guys limited this fall was Cade O'Leary in the 5-pitch mix that he presented. Just, I think he only threw 2 innings at Mississippi State last year. Just when you're dealing with someone like that in the portal, just how are you able to evaluate them? And then getting to see the stuff throughout this fall on the mound, just how excited were you about the 5-pitch mix that he has?
Yeah, I mean, I think, he went to Farragut High School in Tennessee. There was some familiarity. He's from Pittsburgh area. There's some familiarity with him and our staff. Some of our guys had seen him in high school. Um, so it's a good arm. We kind of evaluated him in summer ball. Once he went in the portal, it's kind of like in a summer ball evaluation. His games were on. I could watch them from home. Their league, they were broadcasted. You could watch if you had Roku, you could watch them. So we watched his games from home and evaluated the stuff. But Cade O'Leary, the stuff is real. He's throwing 2 innings. There's still some things from a game standpoint. He's still a young pitcher, and some things he needs to iron out as far as getting his breaking ball to the glove side part of the plate consistently and those things. But it's a real breaking ball with real stuff, and the cutter has been a real pleasant surprise at Mississippi State. I think most of his strikeouts came on the cutter. And he's got feel for a changeup. He's gotten the long levers. I mean, he's a guy that has a very promising future.
Someone you didn't get to work with this fall, but you'll be able to work with in the preseason, Gabe Nard coming from Duke. Just when you're not able to work with someone throughout the fall, just what were you able to do with Gabe? Be able to kind of just through phone, be able to get stuff from him, and where do you feel like he'll be at when he gets here in the preseason?
Yeah, Gabe, wanted to finish his Duke degree and, thought it was important. And he was at the finish line. He only had a couple classes to punch out. So he did that this fall. You're talking about a guy that has 100 appearances in the ACC, like certainly knows how to get himself ready and what he needs to do to compete at this level. It's not going to be nothing new for him coming in here and doing that. But he trained at Octane Performance in Raleigh. Those guys did a really good job with him. They communicated very well. They had a good player plan for him. I actually got to go up there and see him throw, which was pretty neat. But yeah, I mean, it's a big time sinker. That was one of the unique pitch qualities that we added that we didn't have last year. It's a turbo sinker that we felt like could be efficient. He could probably swing on either side of the ball. He could start, he could long relief, he could come in short leverage situations. The strike thrower, not going to get sped up, really good slider. The changeup, he worked on up there this fall, and I thought honestly when I saw him, it was one of his better pitches. So, yeah, we're excited about what he's going to bring to the staff. Just his veteran presence. Him and Brody Purcell and some of these older guys we've added. We're super excited about what they're going to bring to our team this spring.
You guys brought in 4 true freshmen in the recruiting class on the mounds. I think Manny Lantigua was the one that got the most work in the exhibitions. And Manny, I think, is pretty young to being a pitcher only. I think you guys originally recruited him as a position player. Just how have you seen him develop quickly on the mound, and how impressed were you with the way that he competed in the exhibitions? I think against Mississippi State and UAB. I think he closed down a pair of those games.
Yeah, he came in, it's kind of unique. He throws both fastballs, the 4 and the 2, so he's one of the few guys that can throw both, but the sweep slider was real good. I thought he got a little sped up at times in the Mississippi State game, but then he kind of settled in at the end and was poised. And he kind of got himself in a jam, but then he got himself out of it in a big situation, and that was really exciting to see. And that goes into the evaluation process. Like, how does this guy react? He got himself in a jam. Like, how is he going to react once he got himself into it? Which was good. We want to see this stuff maybe continue to tick up a little bit. It's a good arm. He's got good feel for the baseball. He's kind of played a position all his life, so he fills his position well. He's got good feel for the baseball. Keeping him healthy. In high school there was some things that he had. So for us, keeping him healthy will be a big piece. But he's a guy that could definitely factor in for you. I think it's a really good arm. And like I said, he throws strikes and fills his position. Generally, those guys find themselves on the field for you.
Just overall, what do you feel like going into the preseason and coming out of the fall? Do you feel like are the potential strengths of this pitching staff that you guys have been able to put together for this year?
Yeah, I think depth and experience, honestly. If you're looking at, I think it's going to be a lot deeper. We're going to need some guys to step up to fill in the top side of the rotation and kind of have the star power we had there last year. But, as far as the depth, this seems to be a deep staff. Everybody seems capable. This time of year, everybody feels like they have true depth. Nobody's been beat and nobody's thrown bad, so everybody feels they're deep. But I'm talking more from a standpoint of experience and guys that have done it at this level. And last year at times there were some times where we felt inexperienced in some areas. I think this staff will feel a lot more experienced in a lot of different areas. And then honestly, as we get into the season, I think some of the young guys, I like just their mentality and the way they attack hitters. And we didn't talk about I thought Braxton Barnes had a good fall. Young freshman that has good pitch ability and moves the ball around. So there's some things with the younger guys that we feel confident in as well.
Lastly, just obviously Thanksgiving tomorrow. What's the Thanksgiving dish you're looking forward to the most on the Posey table?
Everybody. So my favorite side is the corn casserole. I'll be honest with you. But we'll go to my parents' house. They kind of they like the steaks. They don't like turkey. So we just do like a little filet or something over there and a couple side dishes, nothing crazy. And then we'll come back to our house for dinner and we'll do like a traditional, I'll have a turkey. We'll smoke a turkey here, meat church, we'll use the honey hog. We'll do the whole 9. So we'll spatchcock it. We'll do a turkey here. We'll do, we have a glazed ham and Julie will put together all of the sides, but the corn casserole for sure is the go-to for me.
It sounds like a heck of a time, and it sounds like you might have to fast throughout the rest of today.
I need to fast forever. Honestly, I need to go about 3-month fast, but here nor there.
Same here, but Micah, appreciate you joining us for 30+ minutes here on Sunday Golds. Good luck in the season, and hopefully this will be not the last time you're on Sunday Golds.
Yeah, Brett, no, absolutely. I appreciate you having me. Thank you for all your coverage. You do a great job, and love to get on here and chop it up with you. You're as passionate about this team as a lot of people, so we love getting on here and chopping it up with you. So,
yes, sir. Appreciate it. For everybody listening, thanks for listening. Drop a 5-star review if you can on wherever you're listening.